Hi, everybody. This is another edition of Book Buzz, the program where we, your Beebe librarians, get together and discuss some of the books we've enjoyed recently in hopes that we can help you find your next great read. I'm Karen Stern, and with me today is Jackie Powers and Brigid Black. And we're kind of in our second virtual gathering now. We're all kind of settled into this new way of being. We've kind of realized there's a theme of sorts to what we're wanting to read these days, and it's not really related necessarily to genres or literary styles. It's kind of more about what brings us comfort in this strange time that we're going through. For a lot of people, reading is a great way to give yourself comfort in times of stress, but people's comfort takes different forms. As we've been kind of talking amongst ourselves about it, we've realized there is this common theme of needing something that will hold your attention and really kind of take you away for a while. So in some form or other, you're looking for escape. We might read science fiction because we want to escape to another world. We might read historical fiction because we want to be in another time, or we might read romance because it feels like we want to live in a place where there's always a happy ending, or there's all kinds of other things you could choose to escape. But so I don't know who, or did you want to go first and tell us what it is that is appealing to you?
Yeah. So I'm reading a book that actually isn't. I read a book that actually isn't particularly comforting, I would say, but it was a book that really grabbed my attention right now, which was difficult, which is the problem that I've been having. I find it very hard to stick through a whole book.
Yeah, I think distraction is a big thing for all of us. Getting distracted from what you're reading and needing distraction from the time that you're in.
Yeah, it goes both ways. So the book that I read is actually My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. It is, I think if you're familiar with her, you would know that she's sort of a literary star, very doesn't work if there's a genre, it's just literary fiction. But she is very interesting and not sort of expected. I think you would know that she's unusual.
Yeah.
And this book is no exception to that. It is actually about a woman who wants to spend an entire year asleep. She feels that this would really refresh her life, and you can see why perhaps this had a moment right now where I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I can see that, definitely.
Yeah, or something that normally you'd be like, oh, that's so crazy. Right now I'm like, if I could take a pill and sleep for 3 months, maybe I would.
Yeah. Modern sleep beauty kind of idea.
It's actually set in the early 2000s, so 2000 and 2001, and in New York. It's about a woman who's in her 20s and has had issues in her past, and that's sort of why she's come to this. I think the characters are incredibly compelling, if not exactly likable.
Okay.
But they're very
sometimes compelling is all you need.
Yes, that's it. And it's certainly a heightened reality. Some characters are absurdist in their, and the very idea is rather absurdist in it. But I found it to be just like so well written, and it really pulled me through. And indeed, while it's something that you might not have been interested in at all, it's kind of
like a year ago, you mean?
Yeah, a year ago, you might have found it like, that's so ridiculous. It now kind of has a sort of weird comfort. And I think that when I first started reading it, she described sort of her daily routine, which is waking up, not getting dressed, shuffling down to the bodega near her, trying not to speak to anyone, and then going back to her apartment to go back to sleep. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a familiar experience.
Yeah.
Although I think we'd all are pretty much dying to speak to someone who doesn't live in our apartment these days, but
yeah, I think that's now we'd all sort of want that. She actively avoids her one friend wanting to come over. She just tries to get rid of her all the time. So things that you might not find relatable before kind of become more relatable, and also a letter from the past that you
Yeah.
would
Right.
like to access.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to explain what is really compelling about it. I really do just think that if you enjoy things that are weird, like if you enjoy things that are a little bit on the stranger side, you enjoy literary fiction of this thing, it might be the perfect read for right now.
What is it comparable to? I mean, I know you said it's unusual, so maybe it doesn't really have a read alike, but like, is it kind of George Saunders? I'm picturing like something kind of,
yeah, I think more
but a
sort
little
of,
strange.
yeah, more like that. It would be hard for me to find a particular read alike, because I
It's
have
just such a
never read
different.
anything, yeah, like I've never read anything just like this and in similar veins. It is kind of, I would say, if you enjoy it, weirdly, I would say it goes more if you've enjoyed, say, like Trick Mirror or some of the like feminist critique
Right.
essays and literature, you might like this too, even though those are obviously very different genres, just because there is a sort of part of it that's like the how difficult it is to be a woman.
Right. And I'm picturing kind of more like internal monologue than a lot of plot.
Yes, it is weirdly. I think this is like a hard description, because I do think it starts off very much internally monologue and very little plot, and then it kind of almost develops a mystery element, like not a super intense one, but I don't want to give too much away, but at certain points, the narrator and the main character, who's the one who is attempting to spend the whole year asleep, begins to sort of black out and have experiences where she doesn't know what has happened for the previous few days. And so it's like she is trying to reconstruct things that she's done.
Right. So some lost time in there.
Yes. And that but she doesn't even particularly care about it so much as she's just worried if it made her like interact with humans, which isn't what she wants to do. So it's like a mystery of like what happened, but not because she's concerned about what she's done so much as just the very act of being in public is
awake. Yeah.
Benefits her and awake. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Interesting.
That's definitely intriguing. Very intriguing.
Do you think it's available online? Is it
there are copies available in ebook, and the last I checked, I know that at least the Noble copy, I think, didn't have anyone waiting. It might now have someone waiting, but it's definitely in all the ebook catalogs. She's a very well-known author and has other books if you'd like. I haven't read them, so I don't know how comparable they are to this, but she has other books. So I think that it is available via Overdrive.
Great.
Good.
Okay, I'm gonna go next, and my immediate thought as soon as I knew that we were going to be at home for a long time, and in this particular situation, I had this urge to escape completely, out of time, out of place. And so my first thought was N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth Trilogy, which this is the first book of, called The Fifth Season. And I've read it already. I think I talked it way back on this program. And it was a book that I loved, and I never read books twice. I really almost never read them twice unless I have to for work. And I was just really drawn to the idea of escaping into this world that she created. But what happened first was her new book came out, and that is The City We Became. And this had been on a lot of people's lists for a long time, because Jemisin's trilogy won her 3 Hugo Awards in a row. So, and she's like the only author in history maybe ever to do that, or
yeah, I think it was the first time that happened.
So, these are good. And so in the end, I decided to read this one first before going back. And so today I just want to tell you a little bit about both of them. I'll focus on this one just so you can get an idea of who Jemisin is, and if you're a sci-fi person, why sci-fi / fantasy person, why she's a great read. So first and foremost, this is a book about New York. And part of the reason that I wanted to talk about it today was because it just feels good to recommend a book about New York right now, given the struggles that New York is having. And it's about what makes New York strong. So again, feels timely in that kind of way. Jemison's premise in this book, and I'm going to give you as much of it or as little of it as I can, but is that great cities are born. There's a point at which every great city kind of comes into being, almost like a baby. It's, it spends time gestating, and then at some point it's ready to be born. And in order to do that, it needs help. And the help that it gets is from an avatar. It chooses itself a human avatar, so a representation of itself in human form that becomes, that helps the city to come into being, almost like a midwife, kind of helps to like birth the city. So the thing about New York, though, is turns out there's more than one, because you know how there's 5 boroughs in New York. Well, actually there turn out to be 5 avatars. And you can imagine, and on top of that, there's this entity, this other worldly entity that is bent on trying to stop all cities on Earth from becoming cities. And I'm not going to go into too much more about that, but you can imagine Queens, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Bronx, and Manhattan, very different places, each with their own very distinct personality. And if you're a New Yorker, you get all that. And she is, well, Jemison considers herself, I guess, she says 50% a New Yorker, because her dad, I guess she grew up coming to New York every summer and in all her breaks, even though she grew up officially in Alabama. And she's now lived there for quite a while too. So she considers herself to be a New Yorker, and she loves it. And this is absolutely her love poem to it. So, what happens when these 5 very different personalities, who actually don't always get along very well, I guess in real life as well as in the book, have to come together, work together in order to bring the city into being and to sort of fight this other entity that's trying to. So you can imagine the action, you can imagine the conflict in terms of both character and physical conflict that might occur. There's definitely funny things in the way that she presents it, because each one of the boroughs with its own personality has to like represent in the way that borough would represent, so like Manhattan throws down money and, becomes King Kong at one point, which is kind of bizarre. And also all through it, you've got this, it's an adventure story, right? I mean, and it's very real world, and it's very hard hitting in lots of ways. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But in contrast, so this is a book about the here and the now, right? This is set in the real world now. Her other books, and this trilogy, the Broken Earth trilogy in particular, are second world fantasies. So they are completely otherworldly in very many ways. So these are really, really different books. Like reading one Jemison is not necessarily like reading the other. This one's like full of energy and bing, bang, bong, and, fights and craziness and language. I mean, there's a lot of language, and it's very political, this one. It's, it takes on colonialism, imperialism, racism, corporatism. It's a political book. And these are too, but it's very much subtler. This one in particular takes on slavery, what it means to be a slave. And so there, she always takes on the political, but this in every way is a much more, again, otherworldly in tone. It's very much more, it's subtler. I mean, I guess, it's the difference between New York and the worlds that she's creating in this book. It's very subtle. It's very kind of almost literary in quality in terms of the writing. So I don't know. I can't recommend. Sorry, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, it seems like when you're dealing with those topics kind of in a fantasy, it's easy sort of to divorce yourself from the kind of comparisons that they make to the real world.
Absolutely.
In New York, it's in
your face.
It's a commentary, but I mean, it's like, this is the real world.
She pulls, just like New York, she pulls no punches. In this one, I should say.
Yeah.
And, this is absolutely in your face. And so, you know, sometimes my one criticism of the book is sometimes that stuff, I feel like, okay, I got it. I already got it. And we can, like, I feel like it a little bit interferes with the flow of the story. Whereas in these, it's so seamless. I mean, everything about these books, I can't speak highly enough about these in terms of the way her world building. I mean, given that she's taking you in these books to a whole completely new world that none of us have ever dreamed of except her. And she manages to suck you right into the story and the characters and build this world at the same time. I mean, a lot of fantasy, the only reason people don't like fantasy is because they go on and on and on about all the details of the backstories and the histories and the landscape and the everything. And that
it's all
I'm not that person. Cannot read those books, but she's different, and that's why I really highly recommend her. So those are my, if you want to escape right now into fantasy, I can recommend either of these for very different reasons. They are both available on ebook and audiobooks, both of these, and some of her other ones as well. So they're all in the Noble. So you can go to Libby or Overdrive and get them there. They were not on Hoopla, but there is something else by her there, which I just discovered right before we did this. And it's something to do with some kind of tie-in with a video game that she's written something for. And that's on Hoopla. So there's other Jemison out there. The one thing I didn't see was the second book in this series, called The Obelisk Gate. So that would be the only sticking point, but maybe we can.
I can look into that.
Yeah.
I know someone.
Not the lady who put the purse strings here. We can
pull some strings with that. Well, and it seems like the benefit of the trilogy is that it's completely finished, so you'd have a full story.
Yes.
Whereas the new book is the start of something, right?
Yeah. So if you really want to get lost, go for it. Do these.
Oh, so the new one is intended to be
this one. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I said, but yeah,
I might have missed it.
This is the start of a trilogy too, and there was an element of it that I felt like it was getting started. You know, she is laying a lot of groundwork in this one, and I actually expect the next ones to be even better because it's that groundwork has now been laid. She did a ton of historical research for this about New York because she knew some stuff, but she really dug in to find out like the history of the different boroughs so that she could give them those personalities that I was talking about. So there's a lot that went into this, and it shows. So N.K. Jemisin, good reads.
2 New York books, because Brigid, yours was in New York too, right?
Yes, it is in New York.
Yeah,
it's the New York. It's the New York of 20 years ago. It is spring and summer of 2001.
Oh, okay. It's a very different time.
I was wondering if it shaded toward
9/11
or not.
Yeah,
but
it ends in the summer, so
okay.
So it stays away. Yeah, might be for the best.
Yeah.
So we move now from New York to suburban Minnesota.
That's a state for us.
That's so I have been, for those of you who don't know, I have very small children and husband is an essential worker, so I don't have a lot of bandwidth right now. So I am not doing any literary heavy lifting. I've read a lot of romance, and some of it I was going to talk, and I realized, at least for me, the romance that I've been reading is very contemporary, and I think it's pretty good, but there's not a lot to say. Like you kind of, there were 2 people, they were roughly my age. They fell in love. Like,
yeah, they fell in love happily ever after.
Happily ever after, and it's fine, and it's good, and it's in some cases it's what I needed. I will recommend. It's a couple years old, but The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, I really, really enjoyed. I just thought she did the dialogue really well. The characters were well formed, they were believable, and it was just grabby. But I've read a couple things that are not romance, and today I want to talk about Minor Dramas and Other Catastrophes by
I was wondering about that one.
So it's one of these books that really reminded me of Leanne Moriarty, particularly like kind of lies type Leanne Moriarty, because I think her books are kind of all a little bit different. she's not Leanne Moriarty. But it feels that it has the same tone. It's a little bit gossipy. It's told from different perspectives. Like each chapter is a different perspective, and each kids. There's some teenagers that have chapters, but it's still all told in the. It's not first person, so it's their perspective, but it's an omniscient narrator. It's basically about a teacher. The main characters are a teacher and a mother. And the mother is this like stereotypical suburban helicopter parent who is just has nothing going on except her kids' lives and like engineering their success. And the teacher is she's an English teacher. She's very progressive. She's got like her NPR tote bag and like she's got a little bit of a political agenda. And there turns out to be this whole like social media component with Facebook and like scandal online. And like, it's very now, like it's very, that you can picture something like this happening, and it's an upscale community. And it ends, I mean, it's obviously not a romance, but it still has that kind of like tidy ending, which is why it's not Leanne Moriarty. It's not quite the she has a really she's really good at sort of taking these really dark topics and skimming over them in a way that makes them feel lighter than they are. Like if you think too hard, you're like, ooh, this is really a dark topic. But she deals with it in a way that keeps it from kind of bogging you down. And this is the same, but it's not dark. The teacher in the story, Isabel, has kind of she's a little bit of a dark past, but it's not really. It's fine. But it was just a nice escape. I mean, I was reading it going, look at all these people like out in the world going to school. You know, it just
hugging each other,
talking
shaking hands
in person at a Starbucks. Like it just was like, oh, that's novel. But so I would recommend it if you like Leanne Moriarty, if you like Jojo Moyes. It's very readable. The chapters are short. I think I read it. I was not even planning to talk it, and I basically read it over the weekend. I mean, it's not again heavy lifting, which is what I needed right now.
It sort of seems. Sorry not to interrupt. It sort of seems like an easier read of if you liked Little Fires Everywhere, kind of maybe less literary of that. Is sort of what I'm getting. Like I'm not quite as. Because that one does not have like a tidy ending necessarily.
Right. And this, it's not a perfect, it's tidy though. I mean, it's all like.
It's satisfying.
It's satisfying, yes. And it pretty much ends the way you think it's going to. I mean, you kind of can see it coming. It's a little absurd, but at times, but I actually don't think it's too far from reality, which is frightening. But
well, which reality we're talking about is the question.
Yeah.
Like reality is not very real right now.
No.
Right. So so that was Minor Dramas and Other Catastrophes. Like,
all right.
Sounds
like a good escape.
Yeah. It was enough.
Yeah. Good.
And isn't that all we can ask right now?
Exactly.
That we're all enough.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good selection then for all kinds of tastes. We're always happy for you to share with us, especially right now on our social media. So that's you, Brigid, take it away. Give us.
Where can you find us?
Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram. I can't remember all of the handles.
We are Wakefield Library on Facebook. Beebe Library on Instagram and YouTube, which is where you watch this right now.
And use the hashtag Wakefield Connects and
tag us in your Twitter posts and Instagram posts or Facebook posts, and maybe you'll show up on our social media.
That would be fantastic, because we're all about connecting in every way we can at the moment, as well as escaping. But we're doing it all. So until next time, I think that's it for this edition of Book Buzz. We'll see you all again soon. Take care.